We do have a very brief annual meeting that we need to conduct, and that is a kind of a formality because we're kind of a train that's been on a track for 23 years, and so we don't need to make too many changes, I don't think. But as you all see in front of you, there is an agenda for our annual meeting. And are there any pressing issues or items that any member would like to put on the agenda right now for discussion? If not, I'd like to move to our renewal of our mission statement and our re-election of our board of directors. Any agenda items that anyone has? No? Good. Thank you.
I move to renew the statement.
What's that?
I move to renew the statement.
Oh, great. Would anyone like to second? Second. Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Elliot. We now need... Well, first of all, we need to vote on the motion, but I appreciate your enthusiasm, Jeff. Okay, so could we have a vote on renewing the mission statement, which is to enhance the continuing value of our business educations by meeting the current needs and wants of our members? Could we have a vote? Show of hands. Is that unanimous? Any opposed? Okay, let the record reflect that we have unanimously approved a reinstatement, a renewal of our mission statement. And now, Jeff, if you'd like to make your motion.
I would move to, that we vote to re-elect the 3 board of directors.
Okay, great. That would be me, Bob Cerrone, who is right here. Bob, if you want to wave. And Sandy Wang, who is not here, but I can guarantee you she's done a terrific job for us and been a big help, as obviously Bob has been for many years.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, now we'd like to have a vote to have the board of directors reelected if there is no debate or discussion. Okay, now we could have a vote. Okay, I would like to reflect that it looks like it's a unanimous vote. Anyone opposed? Okay, great, terrific. We've finished that. Any other questions or suggestions or ideas that you'd like the board to be aware of? No? Okay. As I just mentioned, my name is Sandy Weissent. Oh, Elliot, sorry.
I would like to commend the group to carrying, and thank you for carrying on a Chicago tradition of voting early and voting often.
Let it be noted in the record that Elliot Goldman appreciates the voting early and often. So thank you, Elliot. Okay, as I mentioned a minute ago, I'm Sandy Weissent, chairman of the CEO Roundtable. Tonight is our 241st consecutive monthly dinner meeting over a 23-year period. Tonight is the end of our 23rd year. Our January meeting will be the first meeting of our 24th year, and that will be an economic forecast. Our speaker is Bill Strauss, who is backed by popular demand. He's the senior economist from the Federal Reserve Bank in Chicago, and he was here last year and did a tremendous job. I got so many emails after he spoke saying, please get him back. He was terrific. And you may recall, it's almost a distant memory now, but in January, we were facing the fiscal cliff, which almost seems like Y2K. It's like, what was that again now? I can't remember. It wasn't a big deal, it turns out, but he was an expert on that as well, so that was a hot issue at the time. Bill will be back in January. Our February meeting will be conducted by our newest gold sponsor, which is Foley & Lardner Law Firm. They're actually headquartered in Milwaukee, but they have a large presence here in Chicago. And Dave Sino is here tonight, and we'll tell you a little bit about the February meeting in a minute or two to describe for us what that meeting will be about. So Dave, if you want to grab this. There you go.
Thank you, Sandy. Sandy mentioned my name is David Sino. I'm with Foley & Lardner, one of the new gold sponsors for this coming year. And February, from what I understand, is the annual kind of legal update. So we've come up with 3 topics. They'll be about 30 minutes each. We're going to make it practical, so information that you all can learn and easily, hopefully, assimilate. So the first topic is going to be, not surprisingly, an Affordable Care Act update, what you kind of need to know now, what you should be doing, penalties and such. Second, we'll talk about directors and officers insurance, what it protects, what it doesn't protect, and hopefully we'll have a client here as well that kind of gives some horror stories and what not to do. And then second, we'll talk about how to run an internal investigation at your company if you have suspicions, again, what to do, what not to do. So we're excited about becoming a gold member, and look forward to talking more in detail about those topics in February.
Terrific. Thank you, David. How about a round of applause for Foley and Sino? Yeah. Foley and Lardner is going to be a big help, and they've already invited us to a meeting that's actually in the National Directors Institute. That's in the fall. We were invited to that this past fall. How many of you went to that? They were here on. We had about 30 of our members at that meeting. None of them are here apparently, except for a couple of you. But that was a terrific meeting at the Weston River North, 320 North Dearborn. So very convenient. Great program. So that'll be repeated again this November 6th. And there was also another meeting for those of you who are in the Milwaukee area on Thursday this week.
Right.
On
China.
On China technology and working with.
Right. What you need to know if you want to try and protect your technology in China, which is held in Madison.
Yeah, Madison.
Sandy sent a invite out on that as well.
Yep. So that's on technology and protecting your technology in China. That's Thursday in Madison, Wisconsin, that Foley and Lardner has sponsored and has invited us to go to. So that brings us to tonight's meeting, which is all about getting more clients. Anybody here interested in getting more clients, more business? And you're going to do that through discovering the power of digital advertising. We're very fortunate that one of our members is an expert in this area. That's Kristie McDonald, who is the CEO of Viturvian, and she's also the co-author of Google AdWords for Dummies. So none of us would have read that because none of us here are dummies, right? And she's also a Google Certified AdWords Professional, which I'm hoping you'll tell us exactly what that means to be a Google AdWords Professional. So I will turn the meeting over now to Kristie McDonald. So let's welcome Kristie. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone. Is the mic working? Can you hear me okay? All right, because I'm not really a very loud speaker, so I want to make sure you can. And I guess I'll address your question right now, even though I do talk about it a little bit later. A Google AdWords Certified Professional is that we have to retake a certification every year to be certified. So Google has tests that we have to take that not only prove that we know the technology really well, but that we make the right decisions with our clients' money as well. So anytime you hire an agency, you want to make sure that they're certified, just like other professionals you hire in your life as well. I have a really brief slide that I want to go over just about my background, but really Sandy covered most of it, and it was in the invitation that you got. But I am the CEO and co-founder of Viturvian. We're a digital advertising agency. And my partner and I co-authored the book Google AdWords for Dummies. And I am myself certified, and I like to point that out because not only am I running the company, but I do maintain the knowledge needed to obviously teach and talk to my clients about the topic of AdWords. Also, before marketing, I had a very different career than the typical marketer would see, as I used to be an engineer. I graduated from the University of Illinois with a computer science degree, and I was an IT consultant for about 20 years before I decided to do this instead. And I just got sick of travel. So that's why I decided that this was a better career for me. But what makes it interesting in terms of how much fun I have with it is that the things I'm going to talk to you about today, not only do they have an advertising, marketing, art to them, but they're also very scientific and data-oriented. And having an engineering degree has helped me really understand how to make these things work and click right. So before I get started, Sandy and I had to talk about kind of the audience and who everybody was and how much you knew about digital advertising and how much you wanted to know about digital advertising. And I have quite a few slides that I can talk to. But in order to tailor it a little bit more for you guys, I want to get a feel for kind of what your experience with digital advertising is. Are you on the range of digital what? What are you talking about? I have no idea what that is. I need you to tell me. How many people here would you say is that? Okay. Are you on the range where you have ran some campaigns? You're running them now, but you'd like them to be a little more successful. I'd like to find out a little bit more about how to make them successful. Okay, about medium. And then how many of you are actually running successful campaigns now and are curious what's new and how to make them even more powerful? Okay. So I do have quite a few slides on beginners, like I've never heard of this. I'll kind of power through those because it sounds like there's only a couple of you that would be that meaningful for, and I don't want to bore everybody. So if I start talking a little bit fast through those, we'll just get through that and get to the new stuff and what's trending in 2014. So these are the topics I'm prepared to talk about, and I'll kind of go back and forth with them depending on what you guys want to hear. So what is it? Why should you care? What are 7 steps to get started with it, and what are the trends we're seeing for 2014? So what is digital advertising? One of the things, and I was just talking to a gentleman when we first started, I'm not sure if I see you right now, but is that advertising online is more about the channel that you're using. So a lot of the concepts that we're used to with marketing and advertising are similar still in terms of finding your targets and speaking their language and marketing and having the right message, but it's the channel that's changing in terms of where you're advertising, what you're doing. So when it used to be that we used to learn things word of mouth, we're now going to be looking at social networking to achieve that. It's the channel we're doing that in. When we used to do branding in magazines and TV and direct media, now we're able to do banner ads and text ads all over any content on the internet. And then the big one too is that we used to get a lot of our information from the yellow pages. You know, what plumber do we want to use? You know, what phone number for this or that? And now everybody uses the search engines for their information when they're looking for different businesses. Just some terminology. I think it sounds like most of you know it given the hands I just saw, but you know, paid search is one thing that I'm going to be talking about, and that's getting advertising out on all the different search engines. You may have heard pay-per-click. You may have heard PPC. It's referred to as couple different things, but that's paid search. Display ads is the ability to get our ads in front of content all over the internet. You might have heard those called banner ads, text ads. There's all sorts of ways to get that to happen. There's now video ads, app ads, all sorts of things. Advertising digitally now crosses all sorts of devices. So we're advertising people looking on their laptops, on their tablets, on their mobile devices. Now we've come full circle and we've got smart TVs. And so there's all these different places to advertise digitally. And then it's multimedia too. You know, we have text ads, which are still very traditional for us. We've got image ads, video ads, interactive ads. So there's all sorts of ways to get in front of people depending on the channel that we're working in. So search, the big thing here is the power of paid search for someone who's not really worked with it before is that what if your prospects told you exactly what they needed when they needed it? Well, the thing is with search, they're doing that. They're telling us. They're telling us exactly what they're trying to find out, whether it's B2B, whether it's a local service, whether it's something that's just happened to them, whether it's just something that they want to learn. They're telling us in search, and search is so powerful for that. And the key to paid search, and any search marketing for that matter, is to be present when they're looking for you. It also can be very geographically targeted. A lot of people have the question of, well, I'm just a local business. I don't want to show ads all over the country. You can show ads to 10-mile radius of your address if that's what you want to do, or you can show ads worldwide. It really, the range of where you can show your ads is amazing, and how targeted we can get to where we're showing them. And the unique thing about paid search is that as opposed to the old traditional media where you're paying to place your media someplace, with paid search, you're only paying when they click on your ad. So it's much less risk. You're only paying when they're actually interested in what you just said to them as opposed to your competitors or as opposed to somebody else, and only when they're looking for something specific to you. And I'll talk a little bit about the auction bidding structure for people who don't, if you don't understand paid search. In fact, I may ask for a little show of hands of how much detail I should get into that because it could be a little technical. But do people understand how paid search works today in terms of the bidding of keywords? Not really. Okay, so I'll go briefly over that just so you know what it's about, but I'm not going to dive into too much detail because that's a little bit of the technology that we're talking about. So in terms of where does paid search occur, this is a little bit more crowded than I was hoping to see on that. But if you do a search here, and this one I just did litigation attorney in Chicago, I noticed a lot of attorneys were attending tonight, you can see where, you get these search results, any person who's typing this in. But you can see where the paid ads are, which I've circled in orange here for you, versus where the organic listings is. And what that means is Google has your natural results where they've deemed that those particular websites are relevant to the search somebody put in. But the other ones, the 6 that are on there, are being paid for by the companies running those campaigns. And they've decided that litigation attorney Chicago is a good term for them to bid on, to show their ad whenever somebody types that in. And there's also some interesting things in there we can do with maps, and showing up on the map is one of those red dots and all that. But that's the key to getting in front of people. Out of 9 positions that I can see on my laptop right now, 6 of them are paid for. What happened there? So really quick on the auction bidding system. I don't want to go too deep into this. Yes, sir.
So in the auction process, so it's literally an auction, mine auction, I'm assuming.
A what?
Online auction.
Online auction.
So if somebody outbids me, but my bid is second, do I appear second then?
Yes.
Or
So
they bid all over again for the second spot?
nope, it's all one auction
Okay.
at one time. And I'll explain it really quick, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I just don't want to get too technical because I'm sure I'll go over. I'll get a little too technical for everybody really quick, but because there's two key points I want to make out of this. One is people bid on keywords. You and your competitors are bidding on particular keywords, and that's one of our jobs is to make sure we're doing the right ones. Another key component is that Google, one of the things that's really important to Google is that everything that's displayed on their search page is relevant. So they'd be out of business pretty quick if they weren't showing relevant results, both and paid and organic. So it's really important to them that what the ad you're showing is relevant. And so if somebody who has nothing to do with attorneys, has nothing to do with litigation attorneys, is starting to show up in ads, they want to knock that out of the system as soon as possible because their consumers, their visitors, aren't going to like that very much. So they actually maintain something called a quality score for how relevant your ad is. And surprise, surprise, guess who decides how relevant the ad is? The visitors, how often they click on it. There's also some things about how many keywords we put in there. There's some technical things in there too. And so what happens is they take the amount you bid times your quality score, and that determines your position. What this means to us and all the small businesses in the world is that small businesses can compete with large businesses because in some cases it doesn't matter how deep their pockets are. If they're bad advertisers, you're still going to do a better job than they are. There are still times when it matters if they have deep pockets because if they're willing to bid a lot more than anybody else with a bad quality score, they can escalate prices. It's a supply and demand system, and that can happen still. But in general, it levels the playing field. Yes, sir.
When you say a bid, I mean, what kind of money are we talking about?
So it completely depends on the industry. We have some clients who have, say, $1 per click.
Sure.
We have some clients who, we've seen the highest bid I've ever seen is $96 for a single click. And I have a couple slides to talk about that in the future, but the important thing to understand is it's supply and demand. If your competitors are willing to pay $96, they have a reason for that. And it's probably because that visitor they just brought to their website is worth a lot more than $96 to them. And we see that with different industries. Legal industry is a good example. Those bids are very expensive because a legal client is very lucrative, especially depending on, your DUI clients are probably going to be a little bit less because they come and go, but your business clients are going to be a lot more because they're long-term relationships. And then we have, let's say, a client that sells socks. Well, their bids are 40 cents or 30 cents or 20 cents because how much are you going to make on a pair of socks? The whole industry competing for that, it's supply and demand. They're all going to be willing to spend only a certain amount. Now, that said, some really savvy e-commerce companies will understand their lifetime value so that they might pay more than, say, a pair of socks would cost. Kind of like your loss leaders when e-commerce stores are selling things. So I tried to stay kind of high level. Does that make sense to everyone a little bit about how that kind of works? I think the important thing there is that it's something everybody can get involved in, and it's something that you do have to keep an eye on how well you're doing. You can't just set it and forget it in any of these technologies. Yes, sir.
Sorry. So on the previous slide, what pushes you to the right side of the page versus being
Sure.
on the left side?
So these are ordered in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when you bid, you're bidding for top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 type of thing. And over time, you just get a feel as you're running the campaign what it's going to cost you to be in position 1 for this keyword. And every keyword's different. So one that's very competitive might be very expensive to be on position 1. And one that's a little less competitive might not. So for example, litigation attorney in Chicago is probably pretty expensive to be number 1. But let's say, let me think of another one. Litigation attorney I'm trying to think of a small town, in Champaign, let's say, is probably much less expensive to be number 1 because it's not as competitive. There's not as many people shooting for that position. Yes, sir.
If someone's paying $96 for a click, what keeps you from hiring people to click?
Google does. Google has actually a very sophisticated technology to reduce invalid clicks. They can tell if someone from the same IP address is clicking on the same ad all the time.
Well,
they can tell if they...
$96, you just have to have like 100 people, have 100 friends that click
That will just do it, yeah.
for $10. And
I don't know that I can speak to that really, really deeply, but I do know that
the attorney.
I understand.
Criminal attorney.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since we're taping this, I'm not going to make any accusations that Google is. No, I mean, that's a topic that does come up, and they spend a lot of time on it. And there's actually a whole report we can run to understand how many invalid clicks they've detected and how much they've refunded an account because they've detected some invalid clicks.
So in the bid issue, so let's say that you decided that 6 was okay. Because actually I think 4 is pretty good if you're underneath where the map is. So is there a way to strategically kind of figure out like, hey, I don't necessarily need to be the $96
absolutely.
click, but I'm cool with being the $45 click, and I know that still gets me, at least on the page.
Absolutely, and we call that the sweet spot. We're always looking for the sweet spot, and rarely is number one the best place. We call that ego bidding, because rarely is number one the best place, because usually your tire kickers are doing that. Usually that's the first thing they're going to click. They're going to check them out. They're going to check the next 2 or 3 out, depending on whether it's a considered purchase or or an impromptu purchase. But for something like this, they're going to check them all out. And would you rather be number 1 to be checked out and pay $96, or be number 4 and still be checked out and be paying a lot less? I'm going to talk a lot about tracking and conversion tracking too, and that's how we determine what's more successful for you.
Can you say something about like frequency of the phrase that are being like the word frequencies, and fishing for combinations that might have lots of people but are cheap?
So yes, I definitely can. I'm just deciding whether I might want to go through a few more slides here and then get to that point. But you're referring to basically the impressions that you might get, how many times you might show up on things, and the thing you're referring to is something called long tail. So the longer tail keyword that we can go after, the less we might pay for it, and the less traffic there probably will be. But if we can accumulate a whole bunch of those, we can get a really good campaign, not necessarily going after the most expensive keywords, but going after some longer tail keywords in general. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple slides, but that's a very good technique to test out your process and to save some money. And you'd be surprised how many keywords we think are obvious and are really expensive that just aren't worth going after. It doesn't give you the results you think it does. For example, we have several legal clients, and attorney by itself is not a good term. It's too vague. People who are just typing in attorney, they don't make good prospects on a website. In general, I shouldn't say that's for every single lawyer, but in general, that's too vague. Okay, I don't know why that's in there. So let me talk a little bit about display network too, and we probably could spend this whole 45 minutes just talking about search, really, but I just want to touch on this so you know it's available. That's my goal for tonight, really, is to make sure you guys get a good feel for what's out there and what's available to you. So the display network is a little bit different than search. The display network is finding places to put your ads all over the internet. There's content all over the internet that will accept ads, especially from Google, but there's other places that do this as well. You can place your ads on specific websites that you just know you want to be placed on. Forbes, for example, I just type in, I want to be placed on Forbes, and you bid to be placed on there. Now, you're going to be competing against some pretty big dogs if you want to be placed there, but if that's where you want to be. You can be placed based on page topics. So, for example, if you are, let's say, for example, that you have an IT training business, and you want to be placed on pages that talk about how to get better training, and your ad is up there saying, here's an option. You just tell Google that I want to be placed on any page that talks about IT training, and you get on different websites that way. You can be placed based on audience demographics and their interests, which is a really interesting thing, and I'll talk a little bit more of that in the trends section. You can be placed based on interest in your website. I don't know if you guys have heard the term retargeting or remarketing, but that's a new trend that started this year, and it's getting really big right now, where we can cookie someone who's been to our website, and then we can show them ads around the internet later. So you've got a really interested party that's already done something on your site. We can cookie them based on what they've done on your site too. It's really big in e-commerce when somebody puts something in the shopping cart. And now you've probably noticed some of this. Amazon's really good at it because they actually know what you put in the shopping cart and then follow you with it.
What does that mean, to cookie them?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't realize sometimes when I'm using my own little terminologies. Place a cookie on their computer. And what that means is that you've placed a snippet of code that allows you to recognize them again later on when they do something else. And it's browser related. Does that make sense? Still not. I'm seeing a vague.
Can you explain that a little more? So, how would that work in a practical sense?
How would that work in a practical sense?
If I go to your website,
yes.
What are you doing?
So, and actually it's Google that's doing it, but yes, so they place a cookie on your particular browser so that when you go to another website, Google recognizes that you have been to that first website in the first place.
So then they can tell you later all the websites I've been to?
Yes.
So you could actually find out if I'm looking at competitors of yours to provide me with advertising?
It doesn't give you that much detail, not quite that much detail, but yes, there's a lot we can tell about the audience in general.
So is this a subset of the MSA?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that it has a little something to do with some of the topics in the news, yes. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, I just had this experience, so I'm looking for this flat panel TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I go online, and I was a very specific TV. I had the model number, it was a Samsung F, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
And I put in all these numbers. So I go on to Best Buy, and I find this TV, and I say, check the price. So then I go on to Amazon. So I keep getting emails from Amazon on the TV. And
Amazon's really good at this,
and
yeah.
they're all over it. So
they're really good at this.
Every other day, I get an email from Amazon about this TV, the exact model number and the price, and you can get it, and it's very specific about it. So
yeah.
they're honed in that I'm looking for this TV. Now I've already bought the damn thing. They keep coming at me.
Did you buy it from them?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay. If you did, then I wouldn't be as impressed. But okay.
But I have bought something from them, and they keep sending me an email
continuously,
like about the thing that I bought, which I thought that.
Because they know that, so that is interesting that they still are doing that. But yeah, there's some creepy ways to do it, and there's some less creepy ways to do it. So.
Is there a clever way to block the continual solicitations from Amazon?
Like for you to block it? Yes, you can. I'm going to tell you something, but we probably won't get into deep. You can delete your cookies. So you can either block cookies or delete your cookies, but we can get into maybe a more detailed technical conversation about how to do that. So you don't have to let your
that may be the most
computer.
valuable thing to talk
Don't do that, because that's how I'm targeting all of you.
My cookies are painful.
It might be. Someone else had a question over here that I don't think I got to. Did somebody else have a question? Okay. Yeah.
It was about the retargeting. So if somebody comes to my website, I can track them and target them.
Mm-hmm.
Can I target my competitors, people who are going to my competitors' website?
No, actually, Sandy just asked that. You don't have access to that information. But you do. Google's starting to track interests, which is probably not quite as powerful, but pretty powerful. So Google can track that somebody is interested in, say, buying a car because they've been to 10 car websites over the last week. They actually are. I don't know. Haven't tested this thoroughly enough to know how well it works, but they've got some new technology out there that's tracking how close somebody is to making a buying decision, especially on these major decisions. So it's another interesting interest level. And you're right. There's some controversy about how they're tracking it, and whether we all want to be tracked at that level. But as advertisers, it's pretty exciting. Let's see. What else did I want to say about that? So that's kind of the display network issue. I'm going to show you a couple examples. I think it sounds like people have really seen these already, so I don't know that this is as much, but you can show image ads like you're doing at the top. When I first captured this, I wasn't 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that's a remarketing campaign. And the reason I say that is because I'm an AT&T customer, and I've been doing a lot of stuff on AT&T with adding my daughter's phone, and now they want me to add another device to my wireless account. I don't think that they've worded it quite that way if they didn't realize that I was one of their clients. But it could also just be a random one that's on Forbes. But that's an image one. That was actually a animated image one. And then here's some examples of some text ones that are just showing up, and they look like they're kind of just part of Forbes, right? You can see they're an ad, but in general they look part of Forbes. Now, two of these, the top and the bottom one, are just general, if I'm a Forbes reader, I might be interested in these type of things. This one's remarketing. I had just been to Total Hockey to buy my son a pair of skates, and literally they were right on me as soon as I was to the next site. So that's not definitely not a coincidence. But that's again, that can either be, oh, a reminder, I forgot to do that. I need to get back and do that. I'm going to click and go back. you have to be a little creative about it and make sure you're saying the right things to people. And there's things like frequency cap, where you're not following people everywhere, and there's things where we can remarket only on sites that are somewhat relevant to what you were just looking at. So, let's say we're talking about a financial site, a financial planning site. Maybe I'll only remarket to people when they're on sites like Forbes, or when they're thinking about their finances. And I probably won't remarket to them if they're going shopping or going on Amazon or something. So it just kind of depends on how much you want to remarket to people. In general, for clients, we test both ways just to see, because we've seen it successful following them everywhere, and we've seen it successful, more successful just targeting to topics.
Kristie, could you expand on that? For a potential client, you can test the effectiveness of something you're thinking about doing for them? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we test it with their campaign. So everything really that we do for people really is a test. Let's try some remarketing, and we test that for them. So when I use the word test, I'm talking about running a campaign and determining the results. And actually, I will talk about that a little bit too in terms of my steps of how to get started.
Package, or is that something you do as a precursor to?
No, it's part of the package. It's part of going through and running campaigns. So let me talk a little bit about why you should care. It sounds like most of this audience is already pretty well aware why you should care in terms of how big a deal these things are to us right now, and how much our clients are out there looking at things. But I'll just go through these stats pretty quickly. And these might be ones you've heard before, I'm not sure. But some people think that if you're not running an e-commerce store, that maybe, how much do people really research online? Studies have shown, and this is an old study actually, so I was trying to find the 2013 numbers and I haven't found them yet, but 74% of consumers that purchase products or services actually research them online before they buy them. The number's even higher if you're talking about local services. 97% people actually go online first before they hire somebody local. A lot of people in this room I know are more in the B2B space. 78% of B2B buyers start their research online before they engage with anybody.
Kristie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you ask the audience here, how many are B2C and how many are B2B?
Yes. Could I see a show of hands of how many are B2C?
Business to consumer.
Okay. And then B2B.
Oh, so it's interesting. How many are both? Okay.
And that's always an interesting model for us to help out with too, because your search terms don't always indicate whether it's a business or a consumer. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And you have to kind of segment and figure out how to get them to the right spot.
So this is very important for B2B as well.
This is very important for B2B as well, because people are doing their research online. That's where they're looking first. And that's important to be there.
Is there a price break? I mean, I'm not going to search online for a toothbrush. I'm not going to search online for a bunch of things. Is there a price or an amount that catches like a trip point for that?
Not really, because people do search online for their toothbrushes. Now, granted, it's a much harder business model to sell toothbrushes online when I can get them at Target. But there's a whole bunch of people who still do. There's a bunch of people who don't live in urban areas.
I don't think I want to buy or know those people. That would be unbelievable.
Well, they probably don't buy just a toothbrush. They probably go to drugstore.com and they do their entire shopping.
Okay.
And so drugstore.com wants to be there no matter what you're searching for, because they want to fill a cart, just like you do at Target or Walmart. They want to fill their cart, and so they have specials that say, spend $100 today and we'll ship it to you for free. Right? So I mean, that's your lead in, but now it's their job on the website to make sure that they sell lots of things. So
you kind of bring a point. So sometimes there are complementary businesses, like I'm not in the, toothpaste business, I do toothbrushes, but the people might buy in combo. So it almost suggests potentially, the toothbrush person getting together with a toothpaste and saying, let's go in together to own like these group of keywords, so they come to us versus just trying to do it alone. Possible.
I think there's a lot of industries like that where you wouldn't necessarily run a campaign by yourself, but maybe joint venture with somebody to make a bundled offer of some kind.
So could you kind of use, I don't know, search or something to kind of figure out who a good partner would be to actually do that?
I'd never thought of that.
Oh,
but it's possible.
So I get a discount now since I give you
Give you a new idea. Yes, ma'am.
You touched on it earlier, but how do you determine which words are valuable for your own business?
Yes, I'm going to get to that because I have some steps to go through on how to think that through. So let me get to that. Two more slides just on statistics. That another thing that local businesses don't always realize how powerful this can be, but people search on their mobile phones all the time for things. And I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but on your mobile phone, when you search, if it's a local business, there's a feature called click to call, where you can just call them right away. And 70% of mobile searchers click to call all the time. Our campaigns where we have that on for people get a lot of traffic that way. In fact, we have some clients where their mobile website really isn't that good, so we've turned off the ability to even go to the website from a mobile search, and they can only click to call. So this is the big number that I think some people are aware it's there, but they don't realize just how big it is. It's 1 month.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Another quick question for the group. How many of the people in the group actually have click to call? Since that's so useful or helpful, how many of you have click to call in your website or in ads?
Are you asking how many are using that in their advertising, or how many have used that from their phone? Are you which side are you asking? Okay.
Why don't you ask?
All right. Well, how many of you are actually using that in your advertising today, where you have them clicking to call you directly from your ads?
But you say that's a very powerful tool.
It's a very powerful tool. Yes.
So that's something we should all be doing.
Absolutely. Especially if what you want as your main goal is a call, then absolutely your ads should have this. Because people are on their cell phones all the time searching for you.
So tomorrow morning, I should be making sure that, for example, our CEO Roundtable website has in it click to call.
Well, this is for ads, remember. This is for the advertisements, right? So if somebody searches for you, that the ad has it in there.
Again?
It's a new terminology, right? So this is the big number that I want to point out, because all those other statistics lead to this, is that of just how many searches are going on today. And they're searching for all of these businesses, all of our businesses. This is people's new way of life. This is how they find things. This is how they find their lawyers. This is how they find their dentists. This is how they find their chiropractors. Now, granted, there are some other ways. I'm not saying there's not lots of other ways, and social media plays a big role and all that, but people are online looking for these things, and it's important that we're there when they're asking. And here's just a quick list of why you want to make sure that you're using digital advertising of some kind. Those slides just alluded to the exposure and the attention you can get by being there when people are asking for you. It's a very targeted audience, more so than any other medium today. You can be very targeted with who you are advertising to and who you're not, both from a geographic standpoint, from a keyword standpoint. In the display network, you can do demographics, what people are interested in. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to cut and slice and dice who you're actually sending these ads to and who you're spending money on. It's a really quick turnaround to put one of these campaigns up. So it's not like the traditional media where it takes months to get these things running. It's a pretty quick turnaround. It's very flexible. Clients of ours spend anywhere from $1,000 a month to $250,000 a month. It's very flexible in what you can spend and what's available out there to spend. It's also fairly low risk. Now, I mentioned testing, and I'm going to go back to that again, and it's important to understand you have to test with AdWords and see what works for you. But when I say low risk, you don't pay unless somebody's clicking on your ad. So it's not some of these other things we used to be involved in, like say, a magazine ad, for example. They've told you that you can get in front of X number of eyeballs by being in this particular magazine. And in some ways you probably can, but there's a pretty high risk there of how many people really are going to pay attention to it, how many people are going to pick it up. With this, you're not paying for the ad unless they're clicking on it. And it's a level playing field, so people can be competitive even if they're small businesses in this playing field. But my favorite is that it's measurable and accountable. So this is one of the most interesting technologies to come since people started doing postcards and direct mail, is that you can measure everything you're doing and you can split test everything you're doing to see how it's working in this medium. Yes. Another thing that a lot of my competitors aren't talking about, but we do for our clients, and this is really powerful too, is that you can test and leverage your messaging from an AdWords campaign into other advertising channels. So there's a lot of advertising channels that are still, lucrative for people, but are expensive to make mistakes. They're expensive if you get the message wrong, expensive if you get the offer wrong. Magazines and TV and newspaper, radio ads. As soon as you've made your decision, you've put it out there, you've spent that money and it's gone, and it either works or it doesn't. You can use AdWords to determine what messaging really works. You can send message A and message B and find out pretty inexpensively what's resonating with your audience. You can do offer A, offer B, 20% off versus free shipping. Which is better? What do they like better? Try them out, see, and then use that across other mediums instead of trying to worry about, guessing in those mediums. So I want to talk a little bit about who advertises online. I mentioned this, that B2B, B2C, everything, but I'll just go through some of this list. The key here is knowing whether people are looking for you or what you do or solving a problem that you solve online. Now, there's still clients that we've had a tough time making work. I was telling someone earlier today that we had one a couple of years ago that was a water quality testing company. And that was a little rough. We were trying to figure out, okay, what are people sitting down and typing in? And not a lot of people were. And that, there are situations where people really aren't searching for what you offer. But for the most part, most of the people in this room, people are online searching for what you offer. And that's the key to know whether this can work for you or not. So e-commerce and lead generation are really two biggies online right now. If you're generating leads, whether it's phone calls or any other mechanism, online advertising can really help you do that. Professional services, it can be local, national. A lot of people assume that it has to be national, but plenty of local people make this work as well. And again, B2B, B2C, all that. So let me talk a little bit about getting started. I have cheat sheets on your tables that go over some of this too. So this is just a real high level. As you can imagine, there's a lot more detail to this. I've got a 400-page book that says there's a lot more detail to this. So this is really high level. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies in here that I'm skipping. So I'm kind of oversimplifying a little, but it does give you a good feel for the things you have to think about. So first-timer strategy, something to think about, and this is where I was talking about testing earlier, Sandy, is that the first time you ever run a campaign, your goal is to discover your market. You need to figure out what's really going on in your market at your location, for your business. You need to test some different things and really understand what works for you, because everyone's a little bit different. You need to use your campaign to refine your message. So, your competitors all have their messages, you have to have yours, and it needs to be unique. And you need to tune your website too, because digital advertising on the side of actually running the ads is only one half of the equation. How your website handles that traffic and turns it into an actual lead or sale is also another important thing. And you need to check your expectations. AdWords is not a flip it on and it automatically works technology. It's you put some things in there, you test them and you turn them, and eventually you get to a positive ROI, but it doesn't instantly have a positive ROI. You have to test for your business and what you have going on. Some businesses are a little easier than others in terms of there's a lot of history for us to go from, and we know that they work really well for other companies. Some we have to be a little more creative and really fine-tune how people are looking for you. And then also, first things first, before you even get started with your advertising campaign, you need to make sure you've got a good web presence. You've got to, think of it as you've got a bucket to catch them in. We're pouring traffic into the bucket, but the bucket's got to be effective and not have a bunch of holes in it. You need to have a unique message and offer that really stands out from your competitors. Sometimes e-commerce commodity products have a little tough time in AdWords because they don't stand out, and it's hard to tell why you should buy from them versus the toothbrushes, why you should buy from them versus someone else. And you have to have a really effective sales and conversion funnel on your website. So when somebody comes to your website, are you pulling them in, addressing their needs, and getting them from the point of interest to the point of engagement, whether it be a lead gen, a phone call, or whatever else. So before you get started, your first step in this is to set your goals. What's your main goal? Are you looking for someone to pick up the phone and call you? Are you looking for leads in general? Filling out a form on your website? Do you want them to make an appointment with you? Or are you looking for a sale? It's important to be really clear about what you're looking for in here so that your campaign can focus on one of these and get you to that end game. And then this is, someone had asked about keywords, I think, right? This is where we talk a little bit about brainstorming ideas for keywords. when you first get started, so this is your very first campaign and you're just launching something, what we want you to do is get really targeted with what you do, what you're offering, and what your audience might be looking for. And find that bullseye. What are the small set of search terms that people probably would type in if they were looking for what you do? So in our case, PPC agency, paid search help, AdWords help. Those are really targeted. If somebody's looking for that, we're right for them, and we want to be in front of them. You start to go outside of the bullseye. They might be looking for, I want to grow my business. I want more leads. I can help those people too, but they're not looking, as bullseye to exactly what we do. So you want to look at your bullseye first and research some of those terms, both based on just ideas, brainstorming, look at what your competitors are doing. Well, if you have the right keyword tools, I can look at what your competitors are doing. They're spy tools, so I know what competitors are doing. And you want to, just get an idea of what that is, because when you run your very first campaign, it's important to look at these really core bullseye terms and see if they work for you first before expanding out anywhere else. The step 3 is to create your search campaign. We suggest you only do search in the beginning because it's so targeted. We suggest you use Google AdWords because Bing and some of the other tools out there are just not as easy to use. They're not as user-friendly. They're not as, they don't give you as great a data at the end of the day, and they're not used as much by your searchers. Yes, sir.
LinkedIn marketing, because that's very focused on business, and especially with business, a lot of legal business to business. What do you think of that?
So LinkedIn advertising is very much like display network advertising, right? So you are getting in front of people when they're looking at something else. So they're in LinkedIn doing whatever they're doing, looking at articles, looking at other people's profiles. They might be looking at groups, and you're putting an ad over here at the top or on the side. We call that interruption marketing. I didn't use that word earlier. I should have with display network. That's interruption marketing. You're interrupting something else they're doing. And it is effective. It's not ineffective. It's just not as effective as search. And the reason is the mentality. The mentality when someone sits down to do a search is, I'm looking for something, and I want you to tell me what you have. Whereas in LinkedIn, you're interrupting something else they're doing. So you have to have a slightly different ad to do that, and you have to kind of be a little more delicate with the audience, right? Because they might be a little irritated if you take them off the site onto your site, if that makes sense. So I do believe in it. It's just kind of a second step to making sure this works for you first. Does that make sense? And it's very similar to digital, or it's very similar to display network advertising that Google offers. So you just do it within LinkedIn. It is interesting because you can get some really cool demographics in there. So you can advertise to just CEOs in Chicago. And there's just all sorts of things you can select and decide who you want to advertise to. Small and targeted, I already addressed. Just make sure you have just a handful of keywords at first, just to make sure that you're targeting the right audience. And be sure you have some good landing pages to capture this, because if that's where this is failing, you want to know that. You want to know if it's the AdWords campaign that's struggling or if it's really the landing page you're sending it to. Okay, I'm going to try to power through this a little bit because I realize it's already 7:25. The number 4 thing is that you want to write good, compelling ads. So you need to match the search intent. What did they just search for? And your ad needs to match that. So if they search for toothbrushes, you want to sell them a toothbrush in the ad. If they search for toothpaste, you want to sell them toothpaste. You don't want to be using generic ads for these. You want to match exactly what they just asked for. You also want to make sure you stand out from your competitors. It's important when writing ads to look at what your competitors are saying, so you know how are they addressing the same searchers that I'm trying to address. Remember that when I showed you that search page, you're competing against all those other ads, and you want to be able to stand out from everybody. You also want to set up tracking. This is one of the key things that makes this measurable and accountable. You can set up conversion tracking that can track your leads that you generate. It can track sales that you generate. Today, we can now track phone calls that happen from the website as well, and actually track those back to keywords and ad copy that caused the phone call. Today, I would say in the last 2 years or so, any client whose main goal is a phone call, we insist they put call tracking onto their website as well, because we just can't do our job if we don't know what is causing a phone call to happen or not. And also Google Analytics. Some of you may have more sophisticated analytics packages, and that's great, but Google Analytics is free, and there's no reason not to have it on your site to see what your visitors are doing.
How do you get that?
How do you get Google Analytics? No, you have to install it. So usually it involves a web developer of some kind. I don't know who you have working on the site right now, but you open a Google. Okay.
GoDaddy is our host right now. We're
Okay.
switching.
You go to Google Analytics and it walks you through the process. You open a Google Analytics account. The programmer that's working on it for you. Don't you have an intern? I thought you had an intern doing that. No? No.
We tried that.
Okay. I'm sure we can find someone that can get it on there. But it's good to know who's coming there and what they're doing when they're there. So it's not just good, it's critical. You really need to. And once you start spending money to bring people to your website, you have to know what they're doing. And then, I made this go forward. Sorry about that. And then you launch. You want to set your test budget appropriately so you get enough data. And you also have to remember that this first phase here is an investment in gathering data. So at first we're looking to find out how many people are searching, how many people are coming to your website, what keywords are working for you. That's your first goal in this first phase. And then we're going to evaluate and refine. So what we're looking for is, here's some signs of success that we're going to look for. And there's this is where the data comes from, the tracking we want to make sure we're setting up. Are people searching for you, for what you do? Are there plenty of impressions? That's an indicator that we use. Is your offer or your message hitting the mark? The indicator we use to determine that is called a click-through rate. That's how many people, out of all the people that search your ad, how many actually click on it and come to your website? Are they interested in you? And then the last indicator you want to take a look at is, does your website have hurdles of its own? So let's say you're bringing plenty of people to your website and nothing's happening. We're getting no conversions. Your conversion rate is an indicator that there could be a problem with the landing page we're sending it to and how they're handling the traffic. So these are the things that we use to kind of evaluate and refine. Again, those 7 steps are a good start. I've kept it pretty high level for our talk today, but there's a lot more that goes on in there. But that's the thing that I'm really trying to convey here is keep it small at first. Some of the worst campaigns I've seen is when people come to me and say, well, AdWords didn't work for me. And what they ended up doing was, maybe they had a $1,000 budget, not very big or so, and they tried to blanket, hundreds of keywords. And what happens is you're spreading, your money across all of these different keywords, and you're not really focusing in on what can work for you and what can't. So the key is to keep it small at first. And then when your indicators show that things are working, then you can start expanding. I just put a slide up here because there's so much more that I can't really talk about today, but there's just, I've talked about search ads, I've talked about display ads, but there's so much more. Social media ads you asked about, there's app ads, there's YouTube video ads. I mean, there's such a wide variety of places that you can get involved in. Okay, so let me quickly go through the trends. This is actually the most exciting stuff, but I know we're coming up on the end here. So mobile is one of the biggest trends that we've been seeing already, but the trend for 2014 is even more amazing. In 2014, the number of searches that occur on mobile devices is going to exceed the number of searches that occur on laptops and desktops. So, I mean, that's amazing. And I guess we all can envision it because we're all on our mobiles all the time, checking things out all the time. But one thing that companies are not catching up to this. If I were to make a list of our clients and how many have good mobile websites, I don't even know if I can tell you one that has a good mobile website, a good mobile experience. It's really tough. It's last on everybody's priority. Oh, I finally got the website up, but the mobile so-so. It's got to happen next year because A, this is how people are finding us, and B, Google's actually forcing us. They've forced us to merge campaigns and merge all of our devices into the same campaigns. Yes, sir.
Is there any indication? My son's at Columbia College, and I'm sure other colleges have the same thing, but one of his, it's called Television, Mobile Communications, and Advertising. So they're already focused on exactly that.
Getting this to a point, yeah. So that's going to be a big thing for next year. The other really interesting thing, this is something I get kind of excited about, and Google's improving their abilities here, is cross-device advertising. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I do all the time. How many of you start a process on one device and finish it on another? So you're on the train home, you're on your mobile phone, you're doing a search for, say, I'm searching for, I need to buy a watch for my mother for Christmas, right? So I'm making some time on my phone, getting it. I get home, I get onto my computer and do a little more searching. It's really difficult prior to this year for an advertiser to know that that's the same person. right? So, I paid for the ad over here, but they actually make the purchase over here. I don't know it. I think that ad failed. Well, Google's making some big progress in this, in determining that it came from the same device. I don't know if you guys are big into using a lot of Google services today, but I don't know if you noticed they're always trying to get you to sign in and make sure you're always signed in Chrome and all these other things. Well, that's their little technique to see, well, if you're signed in on your tablet and then you're signed in on your computer and then you're signed in on your mobile device, they know it's all you. And then they can tell us, advertisers, that that was the same person across it. So that's a big movement that's happening this next coming year. Yes, sir.
This might be something that's too specific, but I have had exactly what you just described happen with the CEO Roundtable, where people have actually called me and said, I was at the office and I wanted to register for the meeting.
Yeah.
And I figured I'd just do it on my mobile device on the train going home. And when they went in to register for the meeting tonight, in fact, a couple of people have mentioned it to me already, that at our website, when you register for this meeting, which isn't a sale, but it's registering to be here tonight, we have this thing called Gotcha, which is a protector to keep...
CAPTCHA, yeah.
CAPTCHA, I mean,
yeah.
To keep robo systems that are trying to infiltrate your system and bug it, corrupt it. So there's a little code, a security code, if you will, that you have to enter into a little box. And for some reason, our members are telling me that they can see that code on their laptop or their mainframe at their office, but they can't see it on their mobile device. So they can't actually register, because unless you've entered that little 4-digit code, you can't register. So how do is that too specific?
Well, let's talk offline about that, because we've used another thing for, well, I guess I'll just tell you all in case you have web developers you want to tell this to. We've used another program it's called the Honeypot, and if you Google that, or your web developer Googles that, they'll learn what it is. And instead of making a human enter numbers, it actually catches the robots by having something present that a human can't see. And then the robot fills it out, because they don't know you can't see it. And so you capture them and toss them in the garbage. So it takes it away from irritating us for having to, try to read these captchas all the time, to still capturing the robot. So just something to consider. But we need to find a good free web developer to do some of those things on your site. Yeah.
I will tell you this, I don't know if anybody else has had this experience, but that literally just a simple little not-for-profit CEO Roundtable that is all about doing good things. I can't tell you how many bogus registrations we get every month. Before we got the little CAPTCHA, Gotcha protection, I mean, I would get 10 of these a month. All kinds of goofy letters, and it's just people trying to hack into our system.
Yeah.
But that might be your branding, because if you've got CEO, right, can you imagine how many salespeople just lock and load on CEO? I mean, that's a gold mine sitting there waiting to be called.
So anyway, it's something we'll talk about.
Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is that's going to be really big next year, and it already is this year a little bit, but really it's going to get powerful next year, is the ability to target our audience even more. And Google's learning all these new ways to find out more about everybody online. Demographics have been pretty easy until now. Where they've been, that's what we were talking about earlier, where I could tell they've been to the website, I could tell what page they've been, I could tell what they've done. I can market to them differently based on what they've done on my website. But what they like is really interesting too. So, what are their other internet activities saying about what they like? So that's going to be another really interesting thing next year, that we're able to advertise to people based on what we know about their interests. Yeah.
They asked where they've been, like, on our competitors' pages.
No, actually, they asked that over there. No, that's not available yet, but a lot of people are interested in that. So I wouldn't doubt that some really smart minds are trying to figure that out.
Can you tell Google about yourself? Google thinks I'm a female.
Well, actually, yes, you can. Just trying to tell you something. You can. You can go into your Google account and change some of the aspects about your profile in Google. But it might be the things you're searching on. I'm just saying. My goal is to stop letting my kids use my computer because I think that what Google thinks I like is going to change dramatically depending on who's in front of the screen. So. Anyway, I also put a quick slide in here of why to hire agency. A lot of you guys out here are professionals, so you know the answer to some of these questions too. Why do we hire a professional for anything, right? I'm a smart person. I can figure out a lot of things. I could probably study, and when I first started out my business, I did do my own accounting, but I learned pretty quick that that is not a smart idea, and I hired an accountant pretty quick because they know more than I do. They've studied it, they learn it, they stay up on the trends, and that's what we do as well. Yeah, exactly. Education and certification, that's a big one. The thing about this particular profession is that we're passionate about it. I love it. You could tell I love talking about it. It's fun to talk about. There's so much going on in it, but we stay really educated and we're all certified in it. We're up on all the trends, so it's exciting to learn what's new, and we're constantly finding out from Google and our Google rep what's new, what's coming, things that the general audience doesn't always know. We're able to also get into some of the betas that Google offers. Experience, we do this all day, so we're looking at this constantly, day in, day out. We know what's working, we know what's not working. And lateral and vertical experience helps us. So sometimes we can make some analysis based on what's going on with our training clients and our legal clients and our home improvement clients, and they all start to look the same in some cases. Sometimes they're very different, but there's times when they look a lot the same. And then, of course, what I like to say is we wrote the book. So. But anyway, let's talk. I think I've got a lot of questions answered, but let's talk about any extra ones that you might have. Yes?
So, what's the role of organic search and how does that fit into the paid search approach?
So the role of organic search is, obviously you saw on that thing that those are also listings that you show. A lot of studies show that being in both places enhances the click-through rate of both your organic and your paid search, because now you're in two places and it adds credibility to it. I also had the question, and I think, was it you guys sent me an email, right, with some questions, and you asked if PPC actually helps your organic rankings. It doesn't, but what does happen is you have to make your pages quality for PPC, and you got to make them relevant for SEO too. So the fact that you're doing it for both at the same time is helping each other, but there's no relation to if you have a paid search account that you get higher in the rankings. Yes, ma'am.
On your conversion tracking, is that using AdWords analytics? Does it have its own analytic package?
Yes. We ask our clients to use AdWords conversion tracking. You can do it through analytics too, but it's not as effective, and it takes about 2 days for the data to come back in, and that's usually not enough time. But AdWords has its own conversion tracking, and what you do is you go in, you create a conversion, you give it to your web developer, they put it on the right page, and then it triggers whenever a conversion happens.
So with Chrome, if you do Control-Shift-N, you go into the incognito mode. Control-Shift-N in Chrome, and then you go into this incognito mode, and then websites can't track you. They turn on the cookies and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome if you want to track everybody else except yourself. Right. But Economist magazine somehow has figured out how to track even through that. There are a couple of websites that are doing that.
Interesting.
I don't know what they've done. MAC address, there's something on the server side, and they know what's coming. So
that's interesting. I don't know, except that they're probably not using Google tracking. They probably have their own.
But still,
yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious though.
Supposed to turn off everything.
You would think.
So Control-Shift-N,
Control-Shift-N.
if you're in Google search engine.
In Chrome.
In the Chrome.
From your phone, you can do incognito mode, or if you want to from the Control-Shift-N turns off tracking, and there's no cookies or anything. So,
but somehow they're still able to get through. Yeah, I don't know. I want to answer you guys' 2 questions because you had 2 more on your email that you sent to me. You asked me about budget. So a lot of people ask about how much budget do we need. And you had a really good example. It depends on your average click-through, your average cost per click, is what your budget needs to be, right? So with any test, you have to have enough data to decide on it. And if you have expensive cost per clicks, you have to have a budget enough so that you're on enough of the day to get some data. So just an example, let's say your clicks cost $10 a day, or $10 a click, and you have a budget of $20 a day. Well, obviously you're not going to get a ton of traffic because with 2 clicks you're out of budget. So depending on your CPC, you have to have a high enough budget. Now, 2 ways that we've helped clients still test with a low budget. One way is to only run several, maybe 15 out of 30 days of the month. So you have a higher daily budget on those days. And then you just don't run the other days. And that at least gets you through the testing mode of what works, what doesn't. Another way is to reduce your geo-targeting. So if you're targeting the entire country, target a smaller thing. And again, these are just testing mechanisms to show what works. Because once you see what works, then budget becomes less of an issue for you. Because if you can make $5 for every dollar you spend, it becomes less of an issue of how much budget you're spending. You're not testing anymore. You're putting money into creating profit and ROI. And then there was one other question I think I'm missing. Wasn't there? Do you remember? It was budget, SEO.
Around budgeting. I don't know.
I might have combined 2 into 1 there, so I just want to make sure I answered them. Yes, sir.
Clicking. What if they're on for 1 second versus they're on for 2 minutes? I would think the 2-minute click is a lot more valuable than the 2-second click.
Yeah.
How do you determine that?
So that's actually something we analyze when we're optimizing the account, because we can see what's called bounce rate and we can see time on site. And so we look at a particular keyword, we look at how well it's mapping to how long are they staying. And usually it's related to the type of keyword they typed in and how relevant it is. Really generic keywords, they tend to bounce right off and it doesn't really matter to them. The really relevant keywords, they're on there for a little while. It doesn't change what you pay, but it changes our analysis and said, I don't want that keyword because it doesn't work very well for me, but I do want that keyword because it really engages people.
So in the targeting, are you getting to, well, let's just say there's 10 pages on your website, and they put in whatever keyword. Are you sending them to that page that is that site versus just sending them to your?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't really get into that detail, but yes, we map the keywords that they're typing into the pages that they're going to. So let me use a lawyer example. If you do contract law and litigation law, and somebody types in those 2 separate terms, you're not going to send them to the same page. They're completely different customers for you, so you want 2 separate pages. So I think that's all. Any other questions? I know it's getting kind of late.
We go late.
All right.
So. Okay. I got a quick question for you. Most of our audience obviously is CEO or C-suite. If they are overseeing people who do the exact work we're talking about, but they themselves don't actually do it, but they oversee it, what are some important questions that our members should be asking of those who are actually doing the work about what they're doing to kind of measure their performance? Or
what's the key performance indicators is what you're asking.
Some dashboard kinds of indicators.
So some dashboard indicators to tell how your campaign is doing is conversions. You want to know how many conversions you're getting. You want to know your cost per acquisition. How much are you paying for each conversion? So let's say, for example, your goal is leads. How much are you paying per lead? Is that changing over time? So look at trends. Are we paying more or less for leads over time? Is it improving or is it declining? You could get into some detail about what kinds of keywords they're advertising as well, but those are kind of the 2 main things. You also want to find out what methods are they using to advertise right now? Are they just in search? Have they expanded to display? Are they using retargeting? There's a lot of different things they could be doing. Are they doing all of that? There's a lot of companies out there that'll do an audit, too, of your campaigns just to make sure they're being done correctly. Yes, sir.
What's the magic, if there is, to really qualified leads? Because, leads, quotation. So what's the secret sauce to really get qualified?
So there's a couple things. There's 2 sides to that question. One is how do we determine if they're qualified? And so that's in the tracking. From what I just showed you, really, I'm just talking about tracking that a lead happened, but there's also ways to find out that they closed to a sale. Google's getting really sophisticated and providing tools for us to do that. They now can tell, there's technology now today that if you're tracking that, let's say in a spreadsheet or in a CRM or some other way that a lead turned to a sale, that you can now input that back into Google and match it up to the keyword and the ad copy that led to that in the first place. So that's the tracking of it. The actual ability to do that is to monitor the keywords you're using and the ad copy. So, you know, as much as we want to get qualified leads to click on our ads, we want to stop the non-qualified leads. So we write certain ad copy so that we can stop some of them. A good example is if you sell kind of a high-end service that you know some people might be used to getting for free, you want to say somewhere in that ad copy an indicator. Now you can't say something like this is going to cost you a lot of money. Don't click if you don't have it. But you have to find a way, you know, to say that this is premium. Like in the e-commerce space, you might use words like luxury, designer, custom. You know, there's a lot of words we can use that stop people who are looking for freebies. And we don't advertise on keywords that say free in them, unless it's part of our strategy. So. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and that is in lead gen business, and most of our clients are lead gen. That is probably the biggest hurdle in the formula, is that we as a company don't close the sales, our client does. And so we have to work together to make sure that we're delivering qualified leads that then can be closed as well. So, yes?
Is the cost of your service based upon closing of the sale?
It's not. It's based upon the amount somebody's spending in ads. So, although we are experimenting with one of our very large clients on actually making most of our service based on what they close. But it's a tough, you have to really trust the company you're working with, because I don't control whether they close or not, right? So, yes, sir.
So what kind of ROIs do you see for your clients where they haven't been involved in this, and then you get them involved? What's the incremental value you bring into their business?
Okay, so a lot of times what's happening is we're actually looking at clients that haven't even done this at all. So the incremental value we're bringing is getting them in front of an entire new organization, or entire new set of eyeballs, right? And it varies, and it really depends on what their business is. So if you say, how much money have people made from starting an AdWords account, it can be anywhere from a small business who's added, say, $20,000 or $30,000 worth of plumbing business to their campaign, to a large IT consulting company who's added, millions of dollars of closed enterprise sales. So it really just depends on the type of business and how much they're making. Is that kind of what you were asking? I mean, it's totally dependent on exactly the client and what they're doing now and what they can be doing with either this or improved campaigns. Yes, sir.
Kristie, maybe another way to ask the same question is, you look for, when I spend $1, I look for 5 or 3 or 8 or 10, or is there some kind of
we found that
you're looking for? Or?
We found that it differs by client. Sure. Some clients have gross margin goals where they insist that they only spend, or that they always make an ROI of, say, 200 or 300%. I remember one client in specific, and actually he's out of business now, which may be the story I'm about to tell, may be it, but he was thinking about pausing his campaign. I ran a report and showed him that he had 1,600% ROI. 1,600% ROI. And you want to stop this, and then shortly thereafter they're out of business. So I guess just people who don't look at their numbers, that's the issue. So it really depends on your business and what you're either used to making in other avenues, other media channels that you're advertising in now, what profit margin that you've set as your business goal. This is the profit margin that we have to see on any advertising that we do. And a lot of our smaller businesses don't really know that yet, so we're actually helping them determine, what does your profit margin need to be for this to be successful for you. So, anyone else? Lots of questions.
Any other questions?
Hey, Kristie, one more quick one.
Yes.
Just to get started, if you had $5,000, can you get going here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it does depend on your particular industry. In general, $1,500 to $2,000 can generally get somebody started if their clicks are anywhere from the $5 to $7 per click range. someone who's in a range where they have $20 to $30 clicks probably needs about $5,000 to $8,000 to really get started. The key is, one metric that I'll put out there for clients or prospects when we're first start talking is that we want to see at least 300 or 400 visitors to your website to really determine what's going on. And so whatever that really costs from your average cost per click is what we need to spend to get rolling.
Do you have to change the website at all to take advantage of your service?
Sometimes. It depends on your website. So the big thing with websites is they need to have a really strong call to action and something that you're asking your prospect to do, to engage with you. Make a phone call, fill out a form, do something. Just the viewing of your website isn't really enough for you to take advantage of this type of media.
Okay, if you have $5,000 to spend, I suggest you spend 500 of it on the CEO Roundtable. Because you'll get this kind of value every month, literally every month. And of course, as you know, we had this year 27 or 28 other social networking events and third-party business conferences. Those third-party business conferences alone saved you $1,800. And I've told this story before, but there's one member in this audience who isn't actually here tonight, but one of our members loves to tease me that, Sandy, next year I'm going to buy 10 memberships in the CEO Roundtable. I'm going to sell them, I'm going to arbitrage them on eBay for $1,500 each and make money off of the CEO Roundtable. Because once you join here, you've automatically made money. So, Kristie, this was absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
As you all know, we always give a gift to our speakers, and we have what we refer to as our presidential gift, which I think you can smart enough to figure out what that means. It's untraceable. I'm sorry, I forgot I said that, in case this goes to YouTube. But we have a nice gift for you, so thank you very much for your time and expertise. Again, David Sino was here. He talked about what our meeting is in February. Our speaker for January is the senior economist from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Bill Strauss, who Elliot and the others who were here last year are nodding and saying he was fantastic. He gave a terrific economic forecast. Tom Golick's also nodding. He was absolutely terrific. Don't miss January. That'll be a real terrific meeting on the economic forecast. And again, February will be on the 3 topics that Tom Sino talked about, that Foley and Lardner will be discussing, which are the ACA update, what every C-level executive should know about their D&O insurance, what it really protects and what it doesn't, cases and real-world experiences with that, best practices for internal investigations. If you have any suspicions at your company as a C-suite executive about what is going on, you're a little suspicious, one of their experts will be talking about what you should be doing next to be careful you don't get yourself in trouble. So, so that's it. Any other questions, wrap-up? Thoughts, suggestions? Thank you all for your participation in our annual board meeting, our annual meeting of the CEO Roundtable. That was very quick and efficient. We appreciate that. Any other final thoughts or questions? Fritz, you look like you're on.
Can we applaud?
Yes, please.